Hey, thank you all so much for joining another episode of Celeste the Therapist podcast. My name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston. I'm going to have my special guest introduce herself to you all.
I'm Caroline Baker, and I wrote a book called An Influencer's World, and I had the opportunity to interview Celeste for the book. And it was one of those conversations that I had with you that I was waking up in the morning and thinking about what you said. And just you added so much to the book. So I really appreciate it. And I'm excited to be here, like on the other side of it.
I'm always excited when I'm on the other side of an interview because I got to prep for this stuff.
Yeah.
So when I'm on the other side, I'm like, yeah, I get to relax. So I know how you feel. But yeah, this was a few years ago when Carolyn contacted me, and she told me what the book was about. I'm like, this is amazing. Like, yes, I want to be a part of it because it's something that I'm seeing. It's a struggles, and we're just talking about this book. We haven't named it. I have it right here. It comes out June 29th, June
June
22nd,
26th. June 26th. Yeah.
June 26th. It's called An Influences World, a behind the scenes look at social media influences and creators. Tell people a little bit about who you are outside of this book so they can kind of have an idea on who the author is. And I know you wrote it with your husband as well.
Yes. So I was formerly a mental health counselor, and then I started teaching a little bit more. I moved into the teaching role. So I teach classes in counseling and psychology. Then we moved from Dayton, Ohio to the Seattle area, which is just absolutely gorgeous. We love it. And my husband is a business journalist. He's been a business journalist for 25 years and is the publisher now of the Puget Sound Business Journal. And so during the pandemic, I was like, I'm wanting to write a book. And he said, you should really look at this topic of influencers and creators. And he said, you'll be able to connect with our 13-year-old too, because his viewing habits were so different from back in the day when I had like 4 channels and was a kid and watching like Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley. And
Exactly.
it's so different. And so I really wanted to connect to this. And it's such an important area in mental health and psychology right now. And influencing, it's interesting. You would think it would be more studied because it's so huge, but they haven't studied it in this way as much. Like this is one of the first books, like to really look at it from like the psychology angle, the business angle, the historical angle.
Because in the book, they talk about the mental health behind it, the mental health aspect, the financial, kind of what the influencers are going through as they're putting themselves out there. You mentioned like the 4 channels that you had growing up, and I just think about how I had to wait for a show to come on. There was no on demand. When you went through the history of social media, it looks like it started more with Friendsters. Is that what the consensus is? Is where the first kind of big social media
Yeah, I think
came?
that was the big. And then MySpace started to get remember MySpace.
I remember.
And
I would have thought I was a coder because I was creating my own pages. I remember MySpace so well.
it was kind of fun actually, but it just sort of fizzled out. And it was really like Facebook then really
Yeah.
blossomed and took everything over. And then at the same time, like the blogs started to come about.
Yep.
And we had like Perez Hilton,
Yep.
getting big as a blogger, and like Huffington Post coming out,
Yep.
and people starting to be able to earn a living. But it's really interesting, like with YouTube, the first influencers, they were not, doing it for the money or thinking about money or monetizing at
Yeah.
all.
Because that
They
wasn't an
were
option.
no, it wasn't an option at first. And they were just a lot of, they sort of thought of themselves as outside mainstream culture. So it wasn't like the
Hmm.
football and cheer crowd. It was
Hmm.
people who were just like really like creative outsiders, sort of
Hmm.
expressing themselves and kind
Hmm.
of cool. It was sort of punk rock, at the
Yes. Yes.
time,
Yes.
to be
Yes.
like just very cool. But now, the culture sort of changed, and like just everybody, you know,
Well, when
is.
I think about like Facebook, for instance, I remember when it first came out, I was in college, but I felt like it felt fun. Everything was private. I remember the first time on my feed where I got a notification about what somebody did on somebody else's page, and I thought that was so weird. And when I was like, why are they like, and then I started to get turned off by it because I'm like, what does that have to do with me? The psychology behind that is to keep you on. I'm not on long enough. Let me show you what this person's doing and what they commented on. What are your thoughts about that piece when it started to change? Do you remember when it started to change a little bit?
Yes, their whole idea is eyeballs on screens, like keeping you on there. The platforms want you on. And so there's sort of gets to be this addictive quality built into social media that, you know, you have to be aware of. And it's not like to be scared of it. It's, you know, we're not we have free will. And so but you have to be intentional and aware that there are addictive qualities to this. I think from the very beginning, the likes, you know, were addictive because we just, like, as human beings, we want to be liked,
Yeah.
right? Like everybody wants to be liked. And there's actually a little bit of a chemical thing that's going on in your body when somebody clicks the likes. You start getting like all the happy chemicals in your brain, like serotonin and dopamine, are being triggered. And it's sort of like the same kind of thing. Like if you win money or you eat chocolate, it's the same bells and whistles that are going off when you get likes. But
Yeah.
the problem is when you don't get the likes, it's like a punishment. So
Mhm.
it's like sticking your finger in a socket and getting shocked because
Yeah.
it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
And so you want to, and you kind of ask yourself when you're not getting likes, you're sort of like, well, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
What did I
Yeah.
do? And it's sort of it's a slap to the self-esteem, sort of.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it keeps you on. So you're like, well, what can I do to get more and more and more?
Mhm. Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
so that was one, you know, so that's always kind of been there. But then I think the algorithms have, you know, they get more and more sophisticated. Though that's kind of the mathematical way that they use to sort content so that you get content that's most relevant to you, that's deemed most relevant to you.
Right.
And so they keep you on. I mean, even if you can kind of get lost in TikTok, they're good at it too,
Yeah.
like giving you things that you want to see
Yeah. Yeah.
on there. So
Yeah.
yeah, it could be, but you know, as long as you're mindful and intentional, you can hopefully
Something I
avoid.
say all the time. And
Yeah.
I think about because you know as you was writing this book is when the pandemic was kind of just kind of starting, and I think about how much role do you think the pandemic played in people developing even more addictive habits to social media?
Yeah, I think it was huge, huge. I think, you know, were some good things about it because you could,
Absolutely.
you know, you could keep in contact.
Yeah.
You know, all the Zooming became so big too in that
Yeah.
way. Live streaming became really big during the pandemic on social media. That kind of took off. But yeah, some people might not have, they might have developed a habit and then it continues
Yeah.
throughout. And there's like, then
Yeah.
becomes a little bit of social anxiety because you're on social
Yep.
media so much, like getting out is a little bit harder.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
so true. And when you, because I want to talk about like what you've learned from some of these influencers with these big platforms, and like, and then I wanted us to kind of talk about like people that may not be influencers on social media, just helping them stay mindful because at the end of the day we have free will and it's all about being intentional. And I think the more we educate ourselves on what's happening, the more we can be a little bit more intentional about what we do. But as you interviewed so many different influencers in different spaces, what stood out for you the most about what you were hearing them talk about?
I was shocked. I think I did not realize how hard the job was and how much they
Mm,
worked. It is
Mhm.
like unbelievable. And I guess I didn't think of them as being writers and editors and stylists and their own makeup artists. And I guess I thought too, it's glamorous. There's a glamorous side to it because they go to what are called like these immersion events where brands kind of want to get the word out, but they want the word out in like a glamorous, fun way. And so they're having these influencers like travel the world, like at these, gorgeous like runway shows and parties. But they're like, well, we're working, like I'm in my room at night, like editing these, like sorting photos, figuring out, what clips to put. And so it is a lot. And they have to work. Like I talked to Ashley I from The Bachelor. She's like really big in Bachelor Nation. And she said, a lot of the times where I get the most engagement are holidays. And like when you get engaged or Thanksgiving or Christmas or your birthday. And those are maybe the times that you might want to be more private, but that's the time that you're going to get the most clicks. And so you have to be on. And she said, a lot of the times too, when she posts, because everybody has a theory about when's the best time to post when you get the most engagement. But hers, she said, was a lot during like dinner time and a lot when you would go out with friends. And so if you have friends who aren't influencers, they're like, why are you on your phone now? Kind of stop. So I think, yeah, just the amount of work. And then even though I knew how much hate there was online that the influencers get, I think just hearing the stories
Yeah.
and the voluminous amounts of it and
Yeah.
the cruelty of it,
Yeah.
it was shocking. It shocked me,
Mhm.
even though I've, as a therapist, you like
Yeah.
you can hear everything, but it was like it's still, it gets you.
Yeah, and you wonder like how is it that they're able to keep going? But then, we talk about the financial piece. This is some people's like livelihood where they're doing this full time and they're battling between like how do I make money while taking care of my mental health? Did you hear about? I know I read the book, but tell people about that battle that between the like financial and then the mental health and being present, like all of it is not matching.
Yeah, it's so hard because if you're just a typical social media user, we could give advice to people to step back. And obviously we give that kind of advice to influencers too, but it's harder because they have to be on. And in terms of like even reading the comments, like the average user, you could really try not to read your comments if it's bothering you. And some influencers don't, but it's hard because they really like the whole thing is engaging with their
Right.
community, their audience. And so like you need to have that constructive criticism because there are going to be
Right.
comments that are constructive. But how do you weed out the ones that say like your kid is ugly,
Right.
I hope you die? And so some influencers choose to have somebody else read their comments for them, but that's hard. You get kind of curious
Right.
to some, and like you want to read. Some have tricks where when you post, they said like the first hour the posts are mainly going to your community, and so the comments aren't going to be as mean, and then like after about an hour it's going to go out or go viral, and then that's when the comments get kind of worse, so some don't read after that.
Right.
There are all sorts of tricks that you can see people working on, and like psychological tricks as well to
Yeah.
try to
Yeah.
deal with this. But it's just really, it's so unfair because say like if you and I say we worked at like an accounting firm or
Right.
something, you would not be getting racial epithets
Right.
like and ageist comments and that kind of thing, people yelling at you. And if you did, we would go to
HR.
HR,
Yeah. Who do
human
you go to when it's
resources.
social media? It's you got to figure it out.
Yeah.
When I think about how big, like, because we was talking a little earlier, and I say social media is not completely bad, and I just think about how it did allow people to not have to go through a reality show. They can like really create their own content, be their own manager. Um, when do you think that shift happened? Because I remember when reality TV came out, I feel like MTV was a big start with Big Brother, and um, Kardashians like was early on. I felt like reality TV was like a start, and then do you think that kind of influenced people to want to like create their own content by growing up with these reality shows?
I really do, because it's almost like everybody could be their own reality star now.
Yeah.
And yeah, in the very beginning, um, the management companies that I talked to, they said they would see people like the Kardashians and the Osbournes too, sort of
Oh,
like,
Osbournes, yeah.
yeah, kind of cashing in on this. And so other reality stars were like, hey, I want to get in on this. And so that's how like the agencies and management companies started building. And then I think more and more people started to kind of hop on that train. But
Yeah.
absolutely, like reality star and influencer is kind of synonymous now, which is why I interviewed so many
Yeah.
reality TV stars for the book.
Yeah. And one of the things I remember, there's this guy I follow, Gary Vaynerchuk. What's his last name? He does a lot of marketing stuff. He teaches about, his name is Gary V. His name is Gary V. He's pretty popular. But I remember he said, uh, I'm always around these people with money, and they're like, yeah, I got a house here and this there. And he said, as when somebody was like, oh yeah, I just stayed in my hometown and I have a nice little cottage like in my hometown and I'm happy. And people was like, really? You don't have extra stuff? And I just think about how in our country we're really missing out on peace, right? We're really missing out on the simplicities of life. Do you think part of this like push for some people, because this is an important conversation, because there's so many young people that are like trying to create content to go viral. They're harming themselves, harming other people, putting themselves in dangerous situations. Do you think it's money, fame, both, right? Like, because um there's something about social media that creates this flashy presence, and I think people have this assumption that everything kind of falls in their lap, and when it doesn't happen quick enough, there's like this struggle. But um, what do you think influences people to kind of like put themselves out there? I mean, for me, it's about like spreading awareness about mental health, but there's a lot of other like content where different things. What do you think is their people's motive?
It's so individual from from the influencers that I talk to. Like you said, like there's some who are just so passionate about advocacy. Some are just super extroverted people, and some
Wow.
of them said they're just and they just love being like on film and like on camera all the time, and it's just fun for them, so it's like that different kind of personality type.
Mhm.
um I think, it gets dangerous, like kind of the dark side of it, like you said, when you are only living for social media, and then that social media persona takes over, and you get this distance between your true self and your brand on social media, and there's this space in between that. And I think that's when problems can happen, even when people think. A lot of influencers that I talk to, they really try to be authentic, and there's more and more of a push to be authentic on social media. Like even the Kardashians are getting so much more criticized now, like if they're using too many filters and stuff. Like people want that realness. Um, but I think there's like a certain level of realness that you could have, because you're still kind of trying to cater to your audience. And so are you moving a little this way? Okay, this content didn't get a lot of likes, this authentic content, so I'm going to do this. So is that authentic to you? Are you moving that way because of the validation that you're seeking from your community? So it's really point. And then there's also like kind of the issue of comparing and despairing on social media, which is a little bit different than in just real life. Because the idea of social comparison theory is that we define ourselves and make judgment about ourselves in relation to other people that we see. But if we were just like walking into a party in our neighborhood, maybe there'd be like 30 people. And, you're kind of sizing people up maybe a little bit. How attractive am I compared to the people in this room? How smart am I compared to the people in this room? There's more of a chance that you're going to be higher at the top or number one in your neighborhood in this room of 30 people. When you're on social media, there's always someone smarter, richer,
Yeah.
prettier. And so if you're not careful, when you make these upward comparisons of people who you perceive as doing better than you, if you're doing it right, you could get motivated by it.
Yeah.
But if you're not aware and intentional, it can start to make you feel bad about yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't look this perfect, but I want to like you had just said, like, and people think like all this stuff can come to them at once. So they see all these people on yachts and so they think, well, this isn't happening to me. What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
Then that becomes not good.
Yeah.
And so on social media, you're comparing yourself to millions of people. So you have to take yourself out of that environment. You can't only live on there. And for that.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're right. I think we talked about this when we talked about the book about growing up. I only had people in my neighborhood to compare myself to.
Yes.
Social media didn't come out really until college, so by then I had, the puberty stage had passed and all that. Not that adults aren't susceptible, because we are still,
Yeah.
but I think it's really critical in that teenage years of when you're developing. And so there's been a lot of studies about like depression and anxiety rate with especially young girls who had the social media in middle school, like where it was available to them, and how that comparison stuff kind of started. What would you say to parents who have like young kids and they allow them on social media? Because I think some people are like, oh, just take it away, but it's like, I think education is important. It's like, parents didn't talk about sex, and then, like you don't know anything. So you're searching from your friends, like, well, let's talk about it. Like, don't ignore it. And I think sometimes parents struggle with like putting stuff out there. And I think it's important for parents to kind of hear from you who have talked to all of these people about, the social media influences that they may be looking up to.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I have a 13-year-old, and like I was talking to you, we recently moved to the Seattle area from the Midwest. And so he was entering 8th grade, like not knowing anyone, from remote. And Snapchat was like kind of a big tool. It's a social media platform, a big tool in him kind of making new friends. And it was really an important tool. So I think that there is a role, like you said. I don't think just saying like no social media, I don't think that's the solution, but like education is everything. And so I think the first thing, putting some limits on it, because it can be a 24/7 thing. Because I've noted like his thing is like it snaps, it makes a snap noise, like when somebody contacts him. And so that thing, we kind of laughed and teased him. We're like, you just snap when you walk around because it's always going off. So there do need to be time limits set on it. But I think to coach kids about being intentional and aware of what's going on, so for example, with Snapchat, they have this thing, they're called Snap Streaks. And so it's like you're sending a photo to someone every day. And so you like get a streak going with them. And like when you get 100 days, like you get a fire emoji. And so
how do you know all this, Caroline?
I know too much. I know too much.
I didn't know. It's so funny. I'm 40 and my clients be like, the young ones be like, do you know what Snapchat is? I'm like, yeah, but I didn't know all the extra. I'm familiar with it. I don't use it as often.
Yeah, I'm always like, because I'm so into this with the book, I'm like, let me see, let me
Ah,
see.
yeah. Duh. Okay.
So what are you doing? So when you get but this snap streak thing that they came up with, it's ingenious because it's like addictive. And so I do encourage parents to try to, like, if they can, and I know people are busy, but kind of get to know the sites that your kids are on most, see what might be kind of, a more addictive thing. Cause I told him, I'm like, they're doing that to like get you to do it. And he's like, yeah, I know. And so, kind of letting them, the awareness is the main thing. Then
Yes.
this was huge because you talked to me about this with the book, and I thought it was so important. Like, not everything is logical, and not everything is going to be in your conscious mind. Like, you're going to maybe not have some feelings, and it's going to be in your gut, or the stress is going to come out in your neck, or it's going to come out as a headache.
Mhm.
And you need to be aware of the emotions that you're feeling when you're on social media. So
Yes.
if maybe you don't know that you're comparing and despairing. Maybe you
Right.
don't know,
Right.
but you may not feel good. You may feel a
Yeah.
little down, when you get off social media. So if that's the case, maybe start to keep a journal.
Yeah.
And, I would advise kids to see. So are you like not feeling good when you're visiting certain sites? For
Yeah.
example, Ashley who I interviewed, she said that there's this platform or site, and it's called like the Goddess Women or something. And so they take the most beautiful women in the world who are
Mhm.
already photoshopped and Photoshop them more to make them look more beautiful. And so, like, maybe if like teenagers are looking at that, you're not going to feel so good. So,
Yeah.
like, notice, and maybe like start to follow like people that make you feel better than you are.
Yeah.
Like
That's good. I love that.
with the, intentional.
Yeah, but I remember, and I remember saying that. And also, you're right. That's a great point to bring up, is that it's not that people are consciously saying, like, looking at this and they're saying like, oh, I'm in despair, or I'm this. Because a lot of times when I'm talking to clients, they'll say, yeah, like when I did this, then I started to, then later I did this. I say, you ever thought about social media being part of it? And then they start thinking about it, and it's like, you know what, it's true. Because we're just moving, right? We live in a society that we just
Yes.
keep going and going, and so we're not taking time to pause to pay attention to what we're feeling. So we're not even recognizing that the anxiety or the sadness that we're feeling is because we spent 2 hours on social media looking at everybody's picture perfect snapshot, right? Like, it's literally a
Yeah.
snapshot that we're comparing ourselves to. We don't know. We know now from this book what's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Thank you. But I mean, like, without this book and these people with the transparency that they give in here, it's amazing. We're thinking that, oh, look at them in their perfect picture that it took hours to complete, that they had to miss things for, right? What are your
Oh,
thoughts on
yes.
that?
And the problem is, like, it plays a bit of a cognitive trick on us because um, we're people now, with them being more and more authentic and sharing some of the good and some of the bad, we're looking at the sites and saying, well, this person is really honest and they're sharing a lot about themselves. And so then we think you're comparing your real life
Right.
to their real life, but it's not. It's comparing your real life to their highlight reel, because
Yeah.
even though they're still not sharing all of themselves.
Right.
And really, when you think about it, like, even a lot of your friends and stuff, and it's natural, like, people tend to
Yes.
share like birthday parties and
Right.
graduations and more of
Right.
the positive stuff, right?
Right.
So, yeah, and it's just, and like with these filters and things, like there's the phenomenon of, Instagram face,
Yeah. Yeah.
where, it's poreless skin. So like nobody has pores, like the wide eyes, this kind of, that whole look and the perfect bodies. And it affects everyone. Like there's this thing now called bigorexia, and it's like affects men a lot, where they're wanting to have like the perfect Instagram body with like the six pack, and they're not wanting to do it for sports or anything. It's just like they're starving themselves and going on, like unhealthy diets to post.
Yeah. And it's as we're talking about this, and we both have young kids. I think it feels scary, to know like this is the direction like things are headed. But we want to give people a little bit of hope on what they can do, because I wouldn't have been Celeste the therapist. I started in 15 on YouTube and Periscope, because I was just really passionate about sharing things about mental health, and then I just did different things. But because people share my content and they, all this stuff, I've been able to reach people, and from all around the world, who have talked about like how the things I've talked about or put up has been really helpful. A lot of DMs, and so that like makes me happy, right? But I also know there's another side to it. What would you say to people just to help them be intentional? Because you got the whole behind the scenes look on social media, and you've done all this research. But I do want to give people hope, because I don't think that social media is bad. I think the way we use it can be bad. Does that make
That's
sense?
exactly, it makes complete sense. Social media is a tool. Like it's not, because some people talk about it as inherently evil,
Yeah.
and it's not really good. It's how we use it. And I think that it does a disservice to completely focus on the bad, because then you're not attending to an entire generation who's growing up on this, and
Right.
you lose connection with your kids and the next generation, and that's not good. And you want to help them use it in a positive way. So I love to use social media in this, what you're saying, in this advocacy role and in this empowering way, because a lot of people have felt so empowered, and a lot of people from marginalized communities who don't have a voice, have really been able to have a voice on social media. So that is a good thing. I think that you can always find someone on social media who is going through what you're going through. And I think and to kind of connect with people in those authentic kind of ways, is something that's good to do on social media. But I also think that you have to be careful, and like you said, not let it take over your life. You need to be able, you had said to me, you need to be able to like look at a flower and like notice the flower.
Oh, you remember that? Yeah.
Yes. And not, because I was watching, because I like the Kardashians, and I was watching an episode of their show, and they were in like Portofino or something in this gorgeous mansion, and they were inside it, and they were like, look at all the backdrops, like in the rooms. And so they referred to the rooms of this mansion as backdrops, not as rooms. So basically thinking of it in terms of only social media.
Right.
And so I think people need to like separate. And you said like people put every other thing in the world on their calendar, but time for like simple things, time to sit and think, time to, just like take a walk, put it on your calendar, because otherwise it's not healthy. Otherwise it's not healthy. And you have to seek validation from other sources outside of social media, because it's too, with the likes, it quantifies that validation, and you can't have that quantified validation as your only source of validation. You need to do other hobbies, do things, find things outside of social media that give you a sense of self-esteem.
Nice. I like that. And the idea of putting it in your calendar is because we don't live in a Buddhist society that promotes a culture of like peace and in the now. We live in a society that wants you to buy things, feel insecure so you can purchase more things. So knowing the environment that we live in, we do ourselves a disservice when we wake up and grab our phones first thing in the morning, check our emails and like social media, because we're actually programming our mind to start our day with dysfunction. Unless your feed is curated with all like healthy wellness stuff, financial, mental, like if it's all wellness stuff, then go for it. But if it's a bunch of other stuff, and there's nothing wrong with it, I love reality shows. I like my junk TVs. I love
Yes.
my funny TikTok stuff, right? But I also have a time limit on my so basically a couple of tips for people. I don't have any notifications on my social media apps. It's so funny because TikTok does this like all the time. They email me and they're like, "Hey, people are noticing you." Like, because they know I don't have. Because they're like, "She's not pressing it." TikTok, I swear, out of all the social medias, TikTok has it right in how they can keep you on.
Yes.
Because they email me every day to let me know I have notifications that I haven't checked and I should check them. And I know they do that because I'm not checking them fast enough. So I would caution you to, unless you're a social media manager for a company, um, take the notifications off your phone, because as soon as it dings, that uh, you know the thing goes off in your head, and then you're like checking it like like you're an addict. Um, and then you can also put time limits on your phone. So after 15 minutes, I get this notification that says like, "Hey, you reached your 15 minutes. Do you want to do 1 minute, another 15 minutes, or ignore for the day?" If I'm in the middle of something, I'll do 15 minutes. But that like little notification doesn't keep me on all day, because the algorithm is putting all of these things in my feed. And for me, it's like a lot of cooking stuff and funny like family stuff, which is very innocent, but I have things to do.
Yes.
So
You can get off on there. Yeah.
yeah, so it's not even all about comparing yourself, but if you're trying to read more, if you want to exercise more, if you want to eat healthy, I feel like when I meet with people and they have all these goals and they're like, "Yeah, I don't have time," and I'm like, "Let's check your social media time on your phone." And you got
That's
time.
smart. You got time. That's so
You have
smart.
time. People will deactivate their accounts for a little bit and start to realize, oh my gosh, like I have all this time. We have
Yes.
no idea how much we allow social media to take time away from us. And I love the fact that you said we can't look at it as the enemy, because it's not. And as the older generation, if you're looking at it like that, you're going to disconnect from your kids. Your kids aren't going to want to talk to you about what they see on there, right?
Yes.
And you want to keep that line of communication open. So try not to look at it as an enemy. Educate yourself, and if you're an adult like that's on it regular, put provisions in place. Put the living things that you need to do in your calendar, like walking, moving your body, is important. Like continuing to grow your mind. There's podcasts, there's books, there's audio. Like those things are what's going to allow us to live. I feel like if we just keep our head in the sand, we don't feel like we're living. We feel miserable. And so
Yes.
like try to be intentional on like making a better choice. How does that sound?
I absolutely love that. And another thing you had told me too, like escapism is fine. And I like, you want to, everybody wants to escape, but too
Yeah.
much. If
Yeah.
you're using social media as all, like you said you have to lean into the suffering a little bit, and then you feel like you have more control than if you're actually addressing it. So
Yeah.
you can't only escape, use it to
Yeah.
escape
You
and
have such a
continue.
good memory. Yeah. And that is something I talk about a lot.
I love
Um,
our interview. That's why, yeah.
oh, thank you. Yeah, no, but yeah, we didn't bring it up here, but and I escape, right? Like I have a long day at work. I love TikTok because I get a lot of funny stuff on my feed. I have to keep it away from my sessions because then I start getting therapy stuff on there, and I'm like, what is this? I don't want this right now
Yes.
because it's listening to me. um so I love it, right? It's great, and it's a nice way for me to unwind. I don't look at these things as a bad thing.
Yeah.
And so like it's okay, like it's not about us talking about not doing it, but just be mindful on how you do it, because at the end of the day they're a business. And the longer they keep you on buying product and all of these things, the longer they stay in business. And so like, don't let them stay in business at the expense of your wellness, right? And I
Yes.
think you can think of it that way. It can make you like reframe the way you're doing it. And all of those things that you say you don't have time for, maybe start to like put it in your schedule.
Yeah, I love that. It's perfect.
Um, yeah. Was there anything else you wanted to bring up about the book? I think we kind of covered the basis of it and left people with hope because I mean, I'm a big user of social media, and my before I like decided to do the Celeste Therapist thing, I had my own personal pages that were private, and then the more I started to put myself out there, people were trying to like be my friend, and so I just created a brand that was public, and which was different because I was such a private person. I can't believe it. So I know some days I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing this.
Yes. One thing I would encourage, because it brought up when you said that, and that to be conscious of how, and help your kids be conscious of how personal they want to be on social media, and realizing, that it could be out there forever, and just kind of helping people decide how much they want to share. Because there have been some cases where, I've heard people in relationships get upset because a person is sharing everything on social media, and then at like every last thing, but then what do you have in the relationship to share with me that makes it special,
Yeah, that's important. So,
Yeah.
and I hear this stuff all the time, where this person wants to me on, and I don't want everybody in our business. And I said you shouldn't have to have it. You don't have to go with the norms of society. And so for me, because I understand my story, I'm really grounded. It allows me to do this work publicly the way I do, and I share parts of my life. And so be mindful on what you're sharing, because for me, I didn't realize how people struggle with social media until I started working one on one with people and realized how they create, like they allow it to create so much turmoil inside. I didn't know about people with the um, hours of. I think when we met a few years ago and you were sharing, and I was like, really? I didn't realize like people put that much stake into it, and it just made me feel bad for people, like because I don't think that way. I just kind of put stuff out there. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't, because I'm just trying to, one of the things I said to you was like, stay focused on why you're doing it. And I think that's what's helped me a lot. Is like I'm just focused on the people that like want to get the message.
Yes, that, and the grounded in yourself and kind of knowing yourself. And if you really have a sense of who you are, there isn't a problem sharing, because I like to share too. It's fun because you connect with people more that way. And so I can see
Exactly.
why people want to do it, but especially for kids, letting them know like what might be a good thing to share, what might not be good, what might hurt somebody else's feelings,
Yeah.
talking about what is, like being a good member of the social media community, and
Yeah.
what it
Yeah.
means to be that. So they don't do bullying behavior.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. I love that. My daughter loves making videos, but she keeps them in her draft. She doesn't, and I love that.
Right.
She knows, yeah, I love that she doesn't care. But then there are some who may want it, and it's innocent. But for parents, just stay in communication as much as you can. Um, with them, and as we get older, I think we can sometimes be like, what's the big deal? It's just this, it's just that. Try not to minimize like their process,
Yeah.
because their baseline and our baseline is different. My baseline was people in my neighborhood. They have a different baseline, so please, like when they're coming to you about some struggles, like please listen.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, that's the biggest thing, Celeste. Yeah, like just listening to your kids and being open in a non-judgmental way. It's hard
Yeah,
sometimes,
it can
but
be
that's
hard.
it can be hard. But yes, no, um, you because you want to hear everything and you want to be able to help.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. This was so good and fruitful. it's something that it's an area that I'm talking to all of my people about. It comes up, and I'm challenging them, to like decrease. Sometimes they're even saying like I'm spending too much time on social media. They'll say it, but then it's like, what are we gonna do about it, right? We know these things that we struggle, not just social media, but there's a lot of things that we may be struggling with, and we name it, but then we don't make a plan. And so, like today, we're talking about social media, and if it speaks to you where you're realizing, like, you know what, that's me, like create a plan, like use some of the tips that we talked about to like really start the process and implementing the things that you say you want to do, start implementing them into your life.
Yes, absolutely. This was so much fun, Celeste. I love talking to you.
Thank you for your time. Tell people where they can get the book. I just love this cover. It's like it's glowing. Like I don't know how the heck they did that, but it feels like a mirror. One of those.
Yes,
like, mirrors
it's that mirror that we put
Yeah.
on to be on. Yes. So
It
yes,
glows.
you can get it online, Amazon.com, BarnesandNobles.com.
Okay.
And it's available for pre-sale now. So, and it's sale on June 26th.
Thank you so